Alrighty, I just started the YouTube live stream.
Okay. Does that mean they have a couple of minutes of boring time while we have nothing to say?
You guys can continue talking, I guess.
We can have our typical chit chat that we have. I thought somebody was supposed to bring coffee and bagels to this meeting. Have them virtually, or we could have at least shared them.
I pull up on Google some bagels and coffee, if that helps.
Is anybody? I'm working in the Fairfax County Government Center, which is now theoretically open to the public, but I don't think they have shared that information widely. The tax department tax counter is open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 9 to 3, but we don't have much traffic in the building yet. So it's still very quiet over there in the building. Anybody else working in a work site, or is everyone else working from home?
Over at VDOT, we've got pretty much most people at our office are still working at home. We have a very small few number of people that are going in and at different times. Nothing's really changed a whole lot there so far. So it's been good though. We've made the adjustments and things are working out fine. I have my dog bark collar to try to keep the noise in the background down. So I've asked her to be quiet, please, for the next couple hours. So we'll see.
Oh, she's going to be, as long as nobody rings the doorbell, huh?
Yeah, or walks by or anything at all. So, you know.
Of course, then there's Chris Wells, who's in the garage, so his dog won't bark at him. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Catherine. This is Tom Bashotny. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Tom. I'm not sure if you were able to hear, they've started the tape, so we're now YouTube stars.
Okay.
58. So it's, just let me know when you think the participants are on so that I can actually officially start the meeting, family. There, you there? Jose, someone? I'll figure out how I can see the participants on here. Let me see the list of participants. I think we have who we're expecting. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting then. It's 8 a.m. We have our presenters here. Am I correct? I think all the presenters are here. Chris, was there anyone else from other than you and Tom that we were expecting to present this morning?
Yes, actually, Lauren Del Mar.
Is Lauren online? Yep.
I don't see her yet. Jose, did you send out the WebEx for her?
Yes, I did. I sent it yesterday.
Okay, I'll text her.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. I'm not sure if you all could hear what we were chatting about in advance. We're moving WMATA up as the very first item in front of Fairfax County DOT because Greg has another commitment later this morning. He'll be with us for a while, but he does need to leave. So that will give Lauren a little bit of time to get on. All righty. Everyone else is here.
Yeah, Lauren just signed in as well.
Okay, so Lauren's in. So good morning to everyone from wherever they are sitting in their pajamas at home, or maybe just with, you know, like newscasters where you have something that looks nice from the waist up. So thank you for joining us in these COVID times. I understand that, does someone from Supervisor Alcorn's office like to give a comment on Walter not being with us this morning?
Hi, this is Shamily. Supervisor Alcorn had heart bypass surgery a couple weeks ago, and he is recovering well and is at home, but will not be joining us right now. He is keeping track of what we're doing in the office, and we are communicating with him. So as questions come in, he does hear what your needs are. We are scheduling meetings with him starting in September if you have a need to meet with him.
Okay, thank you. All righty, well, we're just going to go ahead and plow ahead because our presenters are here. Those of you that might not have heard, I'm going to start with WMATA. Greg, you can introduce yourself. Has he been unmuted?
Sure, I think I'm unmuted now. Good morning, everyone. This is Greg Potts from Metro. And just bear with me a little bit. I'm going to share slides. So let me just get that going here. I've got a PowerPoint for everyone. TAC. Okay, here we go. Okay, can everyone see that?
Not yet.
No,
Yes.
Yes.
no, but maybe I don't have the appropriate, well, I muted myself.
I can see it on my screen. Is it
Yes.
showing everybody? Okay.
Looks good.
All right, great. So again, good morning, everyone. This is Greg Potts from Metro. I'm in government relations. I'm the Virginia Government Relations Officer. I was here in front of this group, I think it was at this point 2 months ago to give an update, but time flies, so I'm not really sure how long it's been. It's been 2 months. So I just wanted to give a very brief update on the platform project. I'm not going to run through too much of the background here. I think I went over this the last time I was before the group. We obviously have a lot of platforms to reconstruct. During the last summer, we did all of the platforms south of National Airport, and of course, we're doing the platforms on the Orange Line to the west of Boston this year. And not only do we reconstruct the platforms, but we also use the time to enhance the customer experience. So that's the slip resistant tiles, that's the LED lighting, etc. So go to the next slide here. So again, regional coordination efforts. We've been working with the region on this particular phase of the project. This is phase 2. Since back in December, we had a big kickoff coordination meeting. We work quite a bit with the NVTC. They do monthly calls with us. We work with COG, and we of course work with Fairfax County and the entire region to coordinate on the project and make sure that we share information and we coordinate on projects. Okay, so this you should be familiar with. This is the map of what went into effect back on May the 23rd. I think everyone's aware. It's all stations to the west of the Boston station on the Orange and Silver are now closed. And the trains are running on the Orange from the Boston station. There's no Silver Line service, of course. And the Orange Line trains run all the way from Boston to New Carrollton in Maryland. So that is the current configuration right now of what's happening. And I think everyone's pretty familiar with this as well. This is the map of the free shuttles. It gives the hours that are happening right now currently. There's a number of shuttles. There's the Orange Line Local. There's the Orange Line Express, which goes from Vienna to the Boston station. And then there's a local, of course, that runs on the Silver Line from Wheelie all the way over to Boston. And something new on this that happened. So on June the 28th, we reopened a number of metro stations as a result of some of the loosening of the COVID restrictions. So what that meant was that the Greensboro, McLean, and the East Falls Church stations received free shuttles because those stations were previously closed because of COVID restrictions. So that was some good news. All of the stations on the Silver Line now have free shuttles. So this is the good news. I think you all may have heard about this. I hope you have. We announced, I think it was about 3 weeks to a month ago at this point, that the Silver Line will be restored on August the 16th. So that is great news for everyone. And this includes, of course, the 5 Silver Line stations that are to the west of Boston. So that's McLean, Tyson's Corner, Greensboro, Spring Hill, and Wheelie. And those are going to reopen on August the 16th. In addition to the Silver Line, the West Falls Church Station is going to reopen to customers. on the same date on August the 16th, which is great news. So that means now if you see this map, and this map is effective on August the 16th, so it's not effective today, just so everyone knows. And this is on our website, but this is what the map is going to look like once the new service takes place. So now, instead of Ballston being the end of the line on the orange line, it's now going to be the West Falls Church Station, which you can see there. So that's going to be open, and we're going to run a number of shuttles. There's not going to be a Silver Line shuttle anymore, of course, because the Silver Line is going to be open. There's going to be an Orange Line local shuttle that's going to go Vienna, Dunloring, and West Falls Church. And then an express, you can see here, that's going to go from Vienna to West Falls Church now. As you know, right now, the current shuttle goes from Vienna to the Ballston station, so that's going to be a switch of configuration. And then we're going to continue to run a shuttle from the East Falls Church station over to Ballston. So that's the map. That's online on the website. And again, that's effective on August the 16th. And then some more good news is that we expect the rest of the remaining Orange Line stations, so that's Vienna, Dunloring, and East Falls Church, to reopen around Labor Day. So essentially the Tuesday after Labor Day, we hope that the stations are gonna be reopening, and we feel pretty confident about this. There's been a lot of good progress made with the contractor Kiewit. Something else to mention, there's been an expansion of the scope of the project. This is not going to have a big impact on service, so no real impact to customers really. But we're going to start work at the National Airport Station. That's going to begin on August the 8th, and it's going to run through the end of the year in December. So the significant thing about this to mention about the airport station is that it has 3 tracks. So it's going to remain open, and there's going to be no impact to regular train service. So for a customer, they're going to be able to access the station, no problem, but they're going to take out 1 track to work on the platforms. We had previously expected to do this work in the fall of 22 or the spring of 23, but because of the platform conditions, we advanced the project on an accelerated timeline. If you can see in the pictures there, that's an example. Well, not an example, that's the actual platforms at National Airport. And you can see they're in pretty bad shape. So for safety reasons, we moved this up, and it's just a heads up, this is going to be happening. And again, there's not going to be any impact to customers during the weekdays. You're going to be able to access National Airport, and there's going to be normal service running. And they're just going to do the platforms at the station. They're not going to do any of the customer amenities. That's going to be done at a later time. All right. So just to give some pictures, here's the construction progress. They're making really good progress, as I was mentioning. Here's the 4 stations that we're working on. They've finished all of the edges, all of the granite edges, and that's really good news. That's the edge of the platforms. And they are really working better than we had expected. We had thought, there was some concern about the COVID restrictions, about the safety, about the social distancing. That's been going fine. We had also had a little bit of concerns about supply chain because of COVID, and that's been working out okay. So knock on wood, things are going well. If you go on our website, it's wamata.com/platforms. There's a blog, and it gives a construction update where we give updates with pictures every 2 weeks, and we send out emails on this as well. So you can see what's happening, but they're making great progress, and we're very happy with what's happening so far. And that was really it. That was my update. Here's a plug for the website. And there's a lot of communication still taking place on this. Of course, we send out a lot of emails really every other week. If the group needs anything, feel free to let us know. But there's a lot of great info on the website, like I said. And the big date to think about is August the 16th for you all, for this group. Of course, Silver Line is going to reopen. So that's good news for everyone here. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have from the group.
Are there any questions from the group? Jose, are you the one monitoring any raised hands?
Yeah, currently I don't see any at the moment. So I can go over how to raise your hand real quickly. We had a couple more people join the meeting since.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So I could just say one more thing, just mention on safety. You know, we do get some concerns about safety, of course. We continue to require face coverings. So that's a requirement on buses and on trains in the entire system. We did get some word, we get some face coverings from the federal government, about 500,000, and we're going to be distributing those. There was, that news was announced at our board meeting last Thursday. And we're also going to be looking on the process to distribute hand sanitizer to customers as well. So that's come up in the past. I just wanted to mention that to the group that we're, of course, taking everything very, very seriously as far as safety and social distancing. And on the shuttles here this summer, we're trying to put out enough service where you can maintain a safe distance for customers on the buses themselves. And there hasn't been a lot of extremely high ridership. So that has worked out pretty well because the buses are never more than half full, or not from what I've heard. So that's good. But we, are of course working very hard on the safety aspect of that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thank you. Did we go over the raised hands here? Are there any raised hands? No, now I can see them. All right, I don't see any raised hands, so we're going to move along on the agenda to Fairfax County. And thanks so much for your participation, Greg.
Thank you.
We know you have another appointment, and when you need to leave us, you stay safe until the next meeting, all righty? Okay. For Fairfax County DOT, I know I've got Chris and Tom and Lauren. Who will be presenting first?
Yeah, the one document I don't have in front of me is the agenda. I was just pulling it up. What's first on the agenda?
On the agenda, we have project. Let me read really quickly what the Fairfax County DOT is. And of course, if you need to do it in a different order, go for it. So we have project update, pedestrian improvements, soapstone connector, pedestrian bridge over Wheelie at WO&D, Fox Mill, Pinecrest traffic light and crosswalk.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I just got it up also. Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Wells. Why don't I share my screen? And Greg, I think you have to stop sharing your screen maybe first.
Sure, no problem. I was actually just figuring out how to do that. Maybe help me.
I think it might be up top.
If I can't do it, I'll just log off in a second. Hang on a second. Sorry.
I guess I need to know how to do it too.
I think you worked that out in advance so Greg could escape the meeting.
Yeah, let me just log off to make it easy for everybody. Actually, hang on. I'm going to log off. Okay, thanks, everyone.
All right, see you, Greg.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, there we go. So if I do that and make it full screen, can you all see the project status report?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the monthly Transportation Design Division project status report. It highlights the work that's ongoing in the Hunter Mill District. This is the Hunter Mill version of that. I can send it to Shamali, and you guys can have it for posting in the future. Normally in the pre-virtual world, we would send this in advance, and this would be a handout. So on the first page here are projects that are all in post-construction. Of particular interest probably to Hunter Mill are the two on the bottom, the Sunrise Valley projects, the new concrete sidewalk on the south side from Soapstone Drive to South Lakes Drive, and then the improved and widened and safer trail on the north side from Soapstone to South Lakes Drive. Those were substantially completed in June. I'll go through them all, and then if we have questions at the end, that'll be perfect. Oops, how come page down didn't work? Come on. Oh, there we go, page down. Page 2, again, a project that was recently completed, the top one, crosswalk additions to Sunset Hills and Town Center Parkway. Also Another new sidewalk on the south side of Sunrise Valley. This is to the west between Glade and Reston Parkway, was also substantially complete. We have a separate report later on the Wheelie Avenue W&D pedestrian bridge. Another one of interest to the community, no doubt, is the bottom one, the Old Courthouse Road Safe Routes to School sidewalk. That is essentially 90% complete. The limits aren't listed there, but that's along the stretch leading up to Creek Crossing, the gap on the south side along there. Page 3, the Wolf Trap Elementary School folks have finally made the monthly status report list, so I'm sure there's a applause button somewhere. And I believe we did get a chance to distribute those plans. Hopefully, if not, they are available for viewing at this point. Vesper Trail, of course, is completed. We have other projects coming on Sunrise Valley Drive, a cycle track, and then the cycle track projects on New Dominion, Town Center Parkway, and Sunrise. Also under construction is Monroe Street, the first of the Monroe Streets, the northern segment. Then we have 2 other segments of Monroe Street that are coming along line. All of these projects have been, or I think almost everything I've spoken to already, except for the Safe Routes to School, have been geared towards Silver Line Phase 2 opening. On page 5, we have again, more intersection improvements and construction activity. The 2 on the bottom in particular, Glade Drive connects the gap between Colts Neck and Freetown Drive to the signal at Reston Parkway. That's also been substantially completed in June. On North Shore Drive, the project from North Shore Court to Sycamore Valley is now headed into construction. If construction hasn't begun yet, land acquisition was completed and it is listed as in the construction phase at this point. On page 6, we have bus stop improvements on Glade, 4 of them that are still in the land acquisition phase. On page 7, more bus stop improvements that are in the design phase on Glade, North Shore, and Wheelie. On page 8, the Reston Bike Share, which some of the pads have been authorized for construction, and we're in the process of trying to order the equipment. Clark's Crossing, the last segment of the Walk Along Beulah Trail is in its second pre-final design, is scheduled for construction for next year, next summer. Old Courthouse Besley, likewise, is also scheduled for construction for next year. That's a fairly major $16 million project of realigning and raising the roadway and pedestrian improvements associated with that. The segments of South Lakes Drive that we have programmed are also scheduled for late this year, early 2021 construction. That is South Lakes from Greenskeepers to Sunrise Valley. On page 9, Hitchcock to Colts Brook. Then again, we have some intersection improvements at the Dulles Toll Road ramps in the Reston Parkway that are in design. Also scheduled for construction late 2020, early 2021. The Reston Parkway, Dulles Toll Road, I mentioned that one, sorry. Bluemont Way, we've got the section that's immediately west of Reston Parkway that's in design, ready for construction next year. And then a crosswalk project associated with, it's one of our projects that's co-located, so to speak, with the Silver Line work at the Reston Association entrance, adding a crosswalk at the Reston Association entrance intersection of Sunrise Valley. And that's the rest of it. Fox Mill finally is also scheduled for 2020 to 2021 construction. So with that, I will try to exit full screen and unshare my thing. Oh goodness, how do I get out of here? Oops. Oh, there's something. Stop sharing. Hey, there we go. Okay, and with that, I am done with the regular projects on the agenda. Catherine, do you want to take questions on those now?
Yeah, I can't see the raised hand. So Jose, are you still looking for raised hands since you're hosting and I'm a presenter?
Yeah, we have a couple raised hands. I'm gonna start with Josh Anderson. You'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to talk.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to get a little more detail for Fox Mill. So the funding has been identified, not just for the design, but for the actual project itself?
Yes, Fox Mill, there's multiple Fox Mills, so let's be.
Fox Mill Estates, Pinecrest, and Fox Mill Road.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about that. That's on the agenda a little bit later. So what I was talking about was we have a walkway project along Fox Mill. The original limits of that was from Fairfax County Parkway to Reston Parkway. But because of the Fox Mill Pinecrest intersection project, we broke the Fox Mill walkway project into 2 segments. So the first segment that is scheduled for construction is the western segment coming off of the Fairfax County Parkway. And then once the design of the and construction of the Fox Mill Pinecrest intersection is figured out, then we'll figure out how to continue the walkway to Reston Parkway.
And when will the walkway on the west side that begins this year? Is there a month or?
Correct. According to and I'm sorry, I took it down, but I'm still looking at it. Construction is expected. The bid authorization is expected in September, with construction being awarded in October. The estimated completion date is April of 2021.
Okay, and I'll hold my other questions around the light until we get to that.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I'm gonna mute the next person. Mark Malcolm, you'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to talk.
Thank you very much. I appreciate, Chris, your email to me earlier last week. One of the questions I have with projects moving forward, especially those like in my case, my rear frontage was adjacent to the walkway that's being installed on Monroe Street between Fox Mill and Sunrise Valley, one of the projects that's under construction right now. Is it part of the planning process that when adjacent property to a VDOT right of way is impacted, that plan may be shared in advance of the approval of the project? Is that current practice?
This is Tom Bishotny. I'm the director of Fairfax County DOT, and yes, in general, we do try and to share the plans and discuss the projects with the community, particularly when right-of-way is required. In the case of the Monroe Street project, there was no right-of-way that was required. The entire project is within the VDOT, the existing VDOT right-of-way.
And let me elaborate a little bit further. In this particular case, while it was in the complete right-of-way, there was a good bit of leeway with the location of the walkway on roughly about, probably 600, 700 feet of the 1,100-foot walk along the portion toward Sunrise Valley Drive. There was no leeway. As a result, about 9 or so trees had their roots cut that were on the private property. On the balance of that, there were about 16 trees and other shrubbery that had roots cut that extended into the right of way because of the location of the choice of location of the walkway within basically a 30-foot plus band. There was leeway, but it was not shared with the community nearby with the plan of the location of the walkway. I am suggesting that while you just said it would normally be, in this case, it wasn't. Is there any consideration of how to improve that planning process in the future?
Yes, we are discussing how to improve that process in the future.
Okay, sir. Also, since you spoke on that, I am very familiar with the comprehensive plan at the policy level, which is in Fairfax County, we deal with objectives, policy, and guidelines. I respect Mr. Wells' response to me last week regarding guidelines, but the policy wasn't necessarily followed with that particular project. While it's cost effective, the objective 7 wasn't followed, and 2 policy elements weren't followed with that particular project. What I'm suggesting is sensitivity. Besides the comprehensive plan, very familiar with the VDOT guidelines regarding projects like that, regarding treescape vegetation net, and then also their third level, as Jose Del said, his plan on the land use side. There's quite a bit more with additional guidelines that have become part of the comprehensive plan around November of 18. Anyway, with that, with regard to that project, suggest very much that the residents within Polo Fields that have the rear frontage be engaged with the completion of that project, should it vegetation and trees to be done for compliance with the comprehensive plan. Do you have comments,
Yes,
sir?
I do, and I've talked with Shamali, and we will be setting up a meeting with the residents that front our whose property abuts the project, and we will be having a discussion with you about potential landscaping options.
Well, it is not just those, but there may be with others, not just those particular landowners. You'd be surprised how many comments from people not living right by that walkway, but in the general area, who really were surprised by the reduction of the trees vegetation. Anyway, thank you very much, sir.
All right, I'm gonna unmute the next person, Rob Whitfield. You'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to talk.
Good morning, Chris, Tom, and Catherine. I didn't find the raise the hand icon until after Greg Potts had gotten off the line. Let's just suggest that since he's gone now, the next meeting of the Hunter Mill Transportation Advisory Committee, we certainly need an update on this phase 2 of the Silver Line and the resolution of the concrete problems and various other issues. So I don't know when the next meeting will be, let's say September, October. Just a yes, no type of question. Has MWA and WMATA reached what I call a final understanding of a resolution, and who is paying? Don't need the details, but
I think there's a Silver Line update that's coming up later in the presentation, later in the meeting today.
Actually, we don't have a presenter for that today, Tom. I know it's on the agenda, but we don't have a presenter. Do you have any kind of an update you'd like to share?
I could give an update at that time.
At that time. Okay, thank you, Tom.
All right, I'm gonna unmute Adam Rubenstein. You'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to talk.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I already asked Shamali this question. I know she was trying to get an answer for me about, there's a small segment on Sunset Hills Road, the south side across from the post office in front of 11100 that has no sidewalk. It's the only section of that road up until the WD Trail, between the WD Trail and the Willie Avenue, that has no sidewalk, which is a small segment. I was wondering if that's something that could be possibly looked into.
Yeah, hey Adam, this is Chris Wells. I'm sorry, I saw your email and I hadn't responded yet. We do not have a funded project there, and at the moment, the county's funding for pedestrian projects is been fully encumbered by previously approved projects. However, I believe there's development activity program for that whole south side there. So
Yes.
I can follow up with our planning staff, find out what exactly is being planned for that stretch, and see if they have a contact and a timeline, and then I can respond to your email with that detailed information. If we can, unfortunately, developers are their schedule is driven by the economy, so it's not always something we know the answer to. But I'll see what I can find out.
There is currently an office building there, and I don't believe it's been there a while. I don't believe any developments can occur right at that spot.
Okay, so if that particular parcel is not there's no planned activity, then what our answer is as I said, we don't have any unencumbered funding. So thank you for bringing that missing link to our attention. I'm not been previously aware of that. We maintain what we call an unfunded project request list, where we track all the requests that come in. We almost literally get a sidewalk request a day these days. And then what we do is when the next round of funding becomes available, at such time as future funding becomes available, all the requests are considered for prioritization. I will say that we typically do work from the bigger roads down. So if there is nothing planned on that parcel, a road like Sunrise Valley or Sunset Hills, excuse me, is absolutely a road that we would want facilities on both sides.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Tom Bashad, and just wanted to follow up on that as well. I do believe that if not all, most, if not all of the area between Sunset Hills and the toll road east of Wheelie is subject to approved redevelopments for almost all of that property. So the buildings that you see there now largely will not be there in the future. As part of that redevelopment, they will be putting in the frontage along Sunset Hills. We can look at the specific segment that you're have identified and see where that is in the development process, but most of that frontage along the south side of Sunset Hills is going to be redeveloped.
Yeah, the segment I'm referring to, I actually live where the development's going on right now. And this is further east, and it's not part of that development that you're referring to.
Okay, well, there's several rezonings in that same area, so we can look at the details and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
That is all the raised hands I see at the moment.
Okay, Catherine, then do you want me to go on and talk about the subzone connector?
Absolutely. Take it away, Tom.
Okay, so just by way of background, the subzone connector is a project that is, it essentially extends from Sunset Hills to Sunrise Valley. It's intended to be not only a travel way for cars, but also have bike and pedestrian facilities on both sides as well. And it is essentially in the middle, equidistant from between Wheelie and Reston Parkway. And it's intended to connect with Soapstone on the south side and essentially just south of the WNOD on the north side. So that project right now is in the environmental phase. We have 2 federal documents that we're working on. The idea or the plan right now is to try and finish the documentation by the end of the calendar year and then submit it for review and approval by the federal government. There are several alternatives that we're looking at. In the original alternative that we were looking at did impact a historic district association drive in that area. And so we have been looking at another alternative to try and avoid that. Both of those are going through the process right now, and we will need to make a final decision about which one to move forward with. in probably the next 4 to 6 months. And so that's where we are. We need to finish the environmental document and have that approved. And then once that's finished, we can move forward. Yesterday, the board did approve us applying for additional funding for the project. Currently, there's $150 million on the project, and they approved applying for additional funding from the state smart scale competition, which will those applications will be submitted in August. So that's kind of where we are with the Soapstone project. We have had some delays due to the pandemic and not able to accomplish some of the things in the same with the same speed that we normally would have been able to accomplish them. But the project is moving forward, and the next key milestone is to finish the environmental document. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I missed one raised hand. I'm gonna unmute Rick Hamilton right now. So you'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to speak.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I was writing myself a note and forgot to raise my hand. Just was very happy to hear Tom Bashadny say that that they're going to be setting up meetings with our residents on the Monroe Street issue that Mark described so well. But we still need to revisit the planning process, especially in those areas where there are easements. We have lots of instances in polo fields over on the Fairfax County side, Fairfax County Parkway side, where there's failure to notify residents that somebody's going to come onto their property, even though there's an easement there. We understand that can be done, but not without notification. So I think the planning process needs to be revisited with regard to things like that. And then we're having continuing problems after the contractors are done, leaving it in a state which is just unacceptable. So those are just continuing problems, and I wanted to bring them to your attention.
Okay, I would think we'd want to understand a little bit more of the details of the specific projects. Depending on the details, it could be a county project, it could be a VDOT, it could be a developer project. So we would want to probably get a little more detail so we could follow up.
I understand, and I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
All right, and I just see one more raised hand. Robert Whitfield, you'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to speak.
And all right, I was still having difficulties getting to the screen. You mentioned the smart scale score projects being submitted to the Commonwealth, but I think it's probably what, the 1st of August is the deadline? Or the end of this week? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. The deadline has been it's been delayed to August 17th, but it's mid-August. Okay.
Can you make available to Catherine and others here the list of projects being submitted to the Commonwealth?
Yes, it's on the board's website, but we can make that available to Catherine.
Okay, all right. And then for Chris, going back to January, you had a discussion about additional bike share locations in I think it was mostly the north part of Reston. And there was concern expressed in at least one instance where they were taking away a relatively limited number of parking spaces for townhouse development. I never heard the resolution of that. Was that resolved satisfactorily?
Yes, I don't have the details in front of me, but there was certainly the one location that there was the most concern about was deleted from the station was deleted from the bike share expansion.
Okay, I appreciate the update. Soapstone, okay, it's a hideously expensive project, and so I dare say it doesn't score that well in smart scale. What efforts have been made to contain or reduce the costs during the last year?
Go ahead.
The last I saw, was a letter, I think, from you in December 2018 to the TPB saying that the project cost was increasing to 215 million. And I don't recall seeing any of the details of justification for that cost increase. I have heard, but have not heard from an authoritative source, that part of the issue is the cost of land acquisition for this project. What is the, out of the 200 plus million, what proportion is being spent on land acquisition?
I don't have that right in front of me, Rob, but
don't need an answer now. Just whenever you're putting together the next presentation for the Reston community, because we all need to be looking in terms of cost effectiveness, and I don't want to detail here, but when we have the next Reston community meeting, I assume sometime after Labor Day, be prepared to justify the land acquisition costs. Because if we're excess of 50 million, we need to really question what options exist.
We can certainly bring that back, but I think what I would say is, the land acquisition costs that are associated with the project are identified in a way that if we are to pay for them, that how much they would cost. If we are able to acquire them through redevelopment, we may not have to actually pay the cost in cash, but we may be able to acquire some of the property through the redevelopment process. So we can bring the details back at the next meeting.
And I guess I've had about half a dozen conversations with Walter through about a month ago, and I don't know, I guess the next meeting of the comprehensive plan update will now presumably be in September. But I gather that you were supposed to come and present a couple of weeks ago when Walter obviously had procedure. So the scope of what you're preparing to bring to whatever the the comprehensive plan update task force. So is that something likely to be presented in September?
We have a presentation on comprehensive presentation on transportation that is ready to go, and so whenever the next meeting is, that will likely be what the agenda is, unless there's something else that comes up in the meantime that should shift that. But we are prepared to have a presentation on transportation when the task force is ready to have that.
Okay, I'm doing it. This is much for Catherine and the other people here, so that we're all on the same page. I got plenty more questions. I did send something about WMATA last night to various people. I forgot to include you, Tom. My apologies, that wasn't deliberate, and I will get you a copy today. But suffice it to say, the financial issues facing WMATA are very significant, and so far we're not being given any details. That's a matter of concern, and I've raised this to Secretary Valentine and Aubrey Lane as well. I apologize for not including you last night. I'm done.
All right, we have one more raised hand. It is Bob. You'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time for this question or not, but I'll go with it. It's an observation that the amount of roadway debris, I know this sounds silly, but it's not, on the Fairfax County Parkway from the toll road all the way up to Route 7. I mean, debris from car accidents, other gravel, just general litter along the parkway is, I've never seen it that bad. Does the county or does VDOT do any street sweeping? Because the potential for wearing down the roads, damage to vehicles, as well as, blocking storm runoffs and big storms and flooding is becoming more and more of an issue. So does the county or VDOT do any of that type of maintenance on these roads, or they just rely on Mother Nature for it to blow away?
Steve, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this is Steve Welch. I'm the Assistant Director for Transportation and Land Use for VDOT. And our maintenance department does collect trash that we're aware of. We also routinely pick up the trash just prior to doing mowing, but you can call there. We have a number, a 24/7 number of 1-800 for roads to make an inquiry, and also on myvdot.org. So if we're made aware of it, or if our maintenance crews who are out and about happen to drive that route, we'll schedule to have it cleaned up.
You want me to get on here? All right. Okay. Thank you for that. And then for the for Chris and or Tom, and I understand the part about the unfunded sidewalk projects and all, and I know that Shamley and an intern have been making the rounds going across Hunter Mill, taking a look at different road conditions and lining that up with your project list. But what I would be extremely grateful for is to get the name of the department and the actual contact information for those who are responsible for sidewalks, crosswalks, and signage within FCDOT. If you could get that over to Catherine and or VDOT, I would very much appreciate it. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know we owe you still pictures on the whole Walnut Branch on the west side of Fairfax County Parkway, sidewalk issues, as well as new paving. So I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure. And let me just speak to that briefly. I mean, it depends on exactly what you're talking about. Maintenance is shared by both VDOT and the county, and it's a unique situation where we literally have to get into a GIS map to see which segment, even within a neighborhood, block by block or opposite sides of the street, could actually belong to either the county or VDOT for maintenance. When it comes to new infrastructure requests, such as new sidewalks and trails or new crosswalks, we work collaboratively with VDOT. The roads in Fairfax County are all owned by VDOT. So when we do projects, we submit our plans through the VDOT system for approval. Depending on the type of request, for instance, a simple crosswalk is something that we sometimes can just forward to VDOT and have them consider. Other times it needs concrete work, like the curb ramps, or it's even by the design criteria for crosswalks, it needs something more than just the striped crosswalk, such as a median refuge. Actually, we have later on the agenda pedestrian improvements, which Lauren will go over some of that. But then when it comes to missing sidewalks and trails, unfortunately, that is something where the needs far outweigh the funding. The Board of Supervisors has funded $536 million between the year 2002 and 2025, so over 23 years. And while that is a huge amount of money, and it is more than any other jurisdiction in the region has committed to pedestrian, bicycle, and bus stop improvements, unfortunately, the needs just still outweigh the resources. As I mentioned, as everybody's out walking and biking more during the pandemic, we're getting requests almost daily for a sidewalk or a crosswalk or something like that. So we track them. That person would be me and the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. We track them. VDOT typically spends their state funding on larger road projects. So theoretically, VDOT could build a small sidewalk somewhere, but typically they're building the larger projects. We do work, and again, Lauren will go over some of this in her presentation. We look for all funding sources. There are VDOT funding sources that we use, federal funding sources that are administered by VDOT, and then of course the local funding that the county has. So we actively have literally 200 projects going on at any one given time. But unfortunately, as was stated earlier, we still have missing segments on major roads, arterials, 4-lane roads, And then, of course, many more in the subdivisions.
Hey, Tom, this is, Chris rather, sorry. This is Jim Moran. I'm joined at the hip with Bob Sledges. We come as a team. We've lived here at Purple Sage, that's west of right off the Fairfax County Parkway on the west side. We've lived here for 35 years. We never had a sidewalk put in by the builder. Our sidewalk ends and it does not come up to a Walnut Branch. So people have to walk in mud and snow and dirt, and there's no ADA ramp. But on the other side of the Fairfax County Parkway, just recently, all the roads, Bennington Woods, the Walnut Branch on the opposite side, on the east side, Lake Newport's been done recently. 25 years ago, we talked with Kathy Hutchins. She was out here with Goldie several times over the years. We've gone and did a lot of work with pulling up plats, and they had to somebody put a lot of work into figuring out this mapping stuff, and they had to go back to microfiche because there wasn't digital back then. And the point is, we just on the other side of the Fairfax County Parkway, they just not only did they have ADA ramps, they took them out and made them twice as big. We don't have any. Our roads have potholes. There's something to do with drains. Is it Drainsville? Yeah. We are in a somewhere we're neglected. We're not showing up on the we're the red hair stepchildren. There's something going on with our side, and we're trying to get with somebody that can tell us how many times the roads have been repaired on the east side of the Fairfax County Parkway over the years, and why our road hasn't been paved once in 35 years, and why we still don't have ADA compliant sidewalks or sidewalks period with ADA ramps. And another thing, what Kathy Hutchins promised us several times, that there was funding when the Fairfax County Parkway was Route 7100, and they moved it to 286 or 268. The lower the number, the more money we get. And she said, there's money earmarked, money earmarked, money earmarked. So then we find recently that we're not on the list. So first of all, even if we put ourselves on this list, the unfunded list, we have to wait another 20 years to get a sidewalk and a put in.
Sure. So go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying something ain't right with the way we asked that FC.dot and V.dot come out here, because this is somebody has to look at this. It's a very unusual situation. Somebody's got to check into it to find out why we're not getting funding for our roads on this side of the parkway when we see it paved over and over again, sidewalks put in, ADA and striping. We don't even have our striping has disappeared, and the kids get on and off the school bus there. We've got access, they use the trails, so they have to come out of our front entrance and go across the street to get on the trails. We've got mothers pushing they jog with baby carriages with and bicyclists, and this is a main part of Walnut Branch, and it's not safe.
Sure. Well, you've addressed a couple issues. First of all, on the paving, Steve Welch of VDOT actually has on the agenda to talk about paving, and I certainly cannot speak to that. But your neighborhood raised this issue at a previous 100 Mill TAC meeting like this, as far as the missing sidewalks are concerned, and we do track the missing sidewalks. But again, as I just need to emphasize that no one is discriminating. It is that we have literally thousands and thousands of requests that come in over the years from citizens all throughout the county. And hold on, let me finish, please. And so we absolutely would be interested to Shamily will no doubt take note of the specific limits of the sidewalk request. As far as the curb ramps are concerned, curb ramps are routinely updated by VDOT as part of the paving process. And so that is one of the questions we get over the years about why was this curb ramp repaired? And it's part of the requirements under the ADA that when maintenance is performed on a road, that the road is looked at from the ADA perspective. So because the reason those ramps were upgraded is because they were paved. Now that seems unfair to you, and I understand that, but that is how the process works.
We keep hearing, Shamily came out twice or at least one time to look at this. She tells us we're not on the list. And we're trying to find out why, since our meeting with you, they've done work across the street. And yet again, they're getting the work done. And on this side of Fairfax County Parkway, we're not. So even since the last meeting, we brought this up. Work's being done all over the place on the east side. Somebody needs to go across the parkway and look at the west side of the railroad tracks. There's something on the mapping that's not right.
Well, we will, rather than take everybody's time on this issue, we will spend some time with you between now and the next meeting and see if we can drill down and get some more specifics about your situation. It definitely is definitely on the list for future considerations, but since the last meeting, there have been no new sidewalk projects funded anywhere in Fairfax. If there was work done, it was for projects that were funded previously through previous allocations of funding.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't want to take up everybody else's time for a very specific issue. So thanks very much. And I also want to say the sidewalks, it is my opinion, my suggestion that the sidewalks get taken care of first. We can continue to have the potholes filled and live with the asphalt conditions. But I don't see why you would put in a new road and then dig up the roadway to put in curb cuts and ADA sidewalks. I mean, I'm not an expert, but to me, it's a no-brainer. Get the sidewalks taken care of first. That's the main concern, health-wise, safety-wise, and then the potholes can be taken care of and the paving second after the. So I suggest that you put the sidewalks. The priority should be on the sidewalks first, then the roads, and then the signs, and then the striping in a logical order. So if we can get some people out here to meet and look at this condition, we're available. But thanks so much.
Okay, Jose, this is Catherine. Are there any other hands up?
Just one last one, and I'm not sure if it's an old hand, but it's Rick Hamilton. You'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak.
Yeah, it's an old hand because of my age, but no, it's a new hand for the meeting. Yeah, and this is a quick one. The sidewalk conversation reminded me. Sunrise Valley on the polo field side between Monroe Street eastbound toward Fairfax County Parkway, the sidewalk is very narrow. And as Shamily knows all too well, there's been several accidents at Hitchcock and Sunrise Valley that concern us a great deal, and she's working that. But the question, I guess, for Chris was, when I was on the HIMSAM study, there was some talk about Sunrise Valley becoming a grand boulevard with all of these medians and all these sorts of things when Metro opened. And while I don't particularly know or care much about that, the question is, are there any plans for updating Sunrise Valley in the not too distant future? And if so, would those potentially address this, the narrow sidewalk issue? We got bicyclists running pedestrians off the sidewalk there quite frequently.
Yeah, yes, Rick. Thank you for asking. I don't know if it'll be a grand boulevard, but it'll be a more functional multimodal boulevard. We do have a project in the design phase to add a cycle track from along Sunrise Valley, essentially from the new Reston Metro station to the Innovation Station. As part of that, we will be improving the pedestrian facilities both linearly, like along the sidewalks, and then in particular at the intersections. So where the cycle track and the sidewalks come to the intersections, every intersection will have intersection treatments that will improve the operation and safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Now, along polo fields, the frontage is tight, so I'm not promising that that particular sidewalk would be widened, but the project will be building a new cycle track into the roadway area, or in the front of the sidewalk area along the roadway area, to at least give the cyclists a facility to get off of the sidewalk.
Thanks, Chris.
Catherine, we have 2 additional hands. Did you want me to quickly get those?
Yeah, if they're specific to something that's already been presented. Yeah.
Okay. So the first one will be Robert Whitfield. You'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to speak.
And thank you for the process. And just to let you guys know, in contrast to many of my Zoom meetings, this one, the audio is loud and clear. Thank you. So the whole Sunrise Valley planning question raises a couple of related issues, some of which I've raised in the past. Number one, has Fairfax County DOT prepared estimates of peak period traffic trip generation to the new stations? I guess that's Town Center, Herndon, Monroe. So is there any published information on the additional demand, particularly peak hour? And I'll wait for a response and then I'll give you a second question.
There was information that was prepared as part of the original documentation for the Silver Line on access to each of the stations. That information is available and can be shared.
Are we talking from the 2004 EIS?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty out of date. I don't quite remember, but I remember in the October-November timeframe of last year, I discussed with Walter, you have an ongoing study for access across Wheelie from whatever the project is called on the east side of Wheelie. Either there's some kind of study group that's looking at options there. Several times that the lack of connectivity from the east side of Reston Parkway, from the vicinity of the Sheraton and Reston Heights to the Reston Town Center station, is a matter of big concern, in particular because of a large, well, maybe more than one, oh boy, I can't remember the name of the Canadian Brookfield. And so has anybody considered the crossing of Reston Parkway south of the toll road and north of Sunrise Valley?
Actually, I'm going to break in right here, Rob. We'd like to stick with the agenda, and these are appropriate questions at the end when we do public comment, but I think we've wandered away from the agenda item. Tom, if you have a quick response, that's fine, but I prefer putting it on taking these in order in case I lose some of the participants in the meeting.
I'm happy to wait till the questions and comments.
Okay, yeah, Rob, can we move this since this isn't specifically a question having to do with the presentation that was just made, can we handle this at the end? And what was your second question? Was it pertinent to one of the presentations that's been made?
Well, no, I was following up when somebody mentioned about Sunrise Valley improvements being studied. That brings into focus this related needed for the advent of the Silver Line Phase 2. So
absolutely, I understand. Yeah, Yeah, I understand the meandering into the, I understand how the stream of consciousness happened, but I want to make sure our presentations are made on the agenda. And if we have time at the end, let's direct this to the end because we're all interested in the subject. There's no doubt. Were there any other questions pertinent to the presentations that have already been made so that we can get back into the agenda? I think there was a second hand, did you say, Jose?
Yeah, it was Mark Malcolm, and I'll unmute him real quickly.
Very quickly, it was really a follow-on to Rick Hamilton and Robert Whitfield's comment. As Chris Wells presented this, it appeared by his statement that he was talking of a cycle track in the lane of Sunrise Valley Drive, going from Herndon Station to Innovation Station. As I'm familiar with cycle, Jason, would you clarify? Are you talking about cycle track in the roadway, existing roadway? If so, Robert Whitfield's comment about traffic load becomes even more important. Could you clarify, please?
Sure, and we'll be having a public meeting on this when the plans are reviewed. What we have is a project. It's a cycle track, and it's in the area adjacent to the edge of the road. So where today's gutter pan is. The essential scope is that the lanes of Sunrise Valley are wider and the median is wider. And so if we take a little bit from the lanes and a little bit from the median and maybe a little bit from the edge, and I'm oversimplifying it, then there's enough room to do a raised cycle track, a fairly narrow one-way raised cycle track along each side of the road. And then again, the intersection improvements where everything comes to the intersection. So that's the scope. It's a new type of project for us. We've built bigger cycle tracks already in other parts of the county where we have more room, where we have the dedicated room to build a two-way cycle track and a parallel sidewalk. In this case, we're using as minimum amount of space as possible to get a bicycle facility and to still maintain the capacity of Sunrise Valley Road. Sunrise Valley will still be a 4-lane road with turn lanes as it is today. It's just we're literally shoehorning a one-way cycle track in between the the sidewalk, the landscape buffer, and the existing roadway.
Thank you very much. You're saying that the right of way will not have to be expanded.
Correct. Actually, everything will be in between today's sidewalks, so not behind the sidewalks at all. And no, absolutely, everything is within the right of way.
Thank you for the clarification.
That was all, Catherine.
Okay, thank you. Now we've done soapstone. Do you want to do pedestrian bridge next, or do you want to go back to Lauren? Tom, do you want to finish the items that you were planning on speaking and then go back to Lauren?
I should have let Lauren go first, so we'll let her talk about pedestrian improvements. My apologies.
That's okay, thank you. I think you need to unmute yourself, Lauren.
Hi, sorry, I'm trying to share content, but it's not, oh, there, now I can do it. Thank you. On the right screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me here today. My name is Lauren Delmar, and I'm the Fairfax County Pedestrian Program Manager at the Department of Transportation. And I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about crosswalk improvements. I know that the overall item was pedestrian improvements, but I really wanted to drill down into some of these more spot improvement type of situations that we run into. That's a little different from a sort of a larger capital project initiative. So let's see. So first I want to talk about the request process. So we will receive a request from a citizen, a supervisor's office. We'll go out and see something ourselves, or we'll have an identified location because of a safety concern, maybe a previous fatality or previous crash history. And we'll document that request. And we'll actually take an engineering review of the location to develop some initial recommendations and a cost estimate. And I'll go a little more into that. Then we'll document that request and then the preliminary recommendations that we have. And then we'll go back and look at those documentations whenever we have a funding opportunity. So I'll talk about some of the different funding opportunities we have, and we'll look to see how compatible they are with the funding source. So the initial engineering review, the first thing we look at is this VDOT document. It's a long document, but this is kind of the meat of it, which is this table that looks at volumes, speeds, and lane configuration of a crossing. So maybe we can take an example. If you have 12,000 ADT road, you have a speed limit of 35 miles an hour, and you have 3 lanes with a refuge island. That's a condition A. Condition A means that this candidate location is suitable for a marked crosswalk by itself. It doesn't need any additional treatments aside from the marked crosswalk and some standard warning signage. Condition B means that it's a little bit more, needs to be considered a little more, and maybe some additional means are necessary. Can you fit a refuge island in to make it a condition A? Would you need to look at an RFB, which is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon? I'll talk a little more about those. And condition C then is that you need to do additional treatments before you can put the crosswalk in. So you need to put that rectangular rapid flashing beacon in. You need to put that median refuge in. Something else has to happen in order to be able to qualify to get a crosswalk. And then condition D means that under this circumstance, a marked crosswalk cannot be installed. And that does happen sometimes with really major roadways. And the only way to overcome that condition D is to make it a signalized crosswalk. So that would be either a hawk or a pedestrian hybrid beacon or a full signal. And so in that engineering review, we're looking at some of these countermeasures. This example shows what a road diet might look like before and after with a pedestrian refuge. I also mentioned the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We'll just consider what's an appropriate countermeasure at this location. If there's on-street parking, that sometimes leaves room for a curb extension in the parking lane to narrow the crosswalk. Whenever we have a median or either a raised median that's existing or a striped median, we look to see if we can get a refuge island. So those are the types of countermeasures that we're considering. And then once countermeasures have been identified and we know kind of what the cost of those might be, we'll document that. And then that's when we come back for what kind of implementation opportunities, funding opportunities we might have. So there's a few that I wanted to talk specifically about today. The bottom of my list is the transportation priorities plan. So that's kind of, we have a project, we know we want to do it, and we're going to need more funding, and we don't have a grant opportunity. That's sort of the last resort. First, we're looking at the VDOT annual repaving program. So through that, if there's a crosswalk that can just get marked and we know that there's demand there, sometimes we can use that program as a means to get that to happen. We'll also have grant opportunities. So I'll talk a little bit about these as well. They're the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. We had this in 2018. It hasn't been renewed to date. VDOT's decided to spend some of their safety funding elsewhere, but there's still potential that they'll do this again. Then we have the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program or the Safe Routes to School Program. Those are bundled into one now. And those applications are typically every 2 years. So those were in 2017, we had a round of applications, and then last summer in 2019. So to talk about the repaving program, this is a chance to add a new crosswalk or upgrade an existing crosswalk to high visibility markings. Those are sort of the simplest things we can do. We can also add crosswalk signage. This is something that Fairfax County does in partnership with VDOT. We can relocate an existing crosswalk. If there's other things that are happening to the street, like we're going to do a road diet or roadway reconfiguration, we're going to narrow the travel lane, something like that could help improve the safety of an existing crosswalk or a new crosswalk. Sometimes we can relocate bus stops for crosswalk safety. It depends on what amount of work that takes. If it's just a flag, like you can see this stop here in this picture, it's just a sign in the ground. That's usually easy to relocate. That one's actually a WMATA stop, so it's a little trickier to relocate. We have to coordinate with WMATA and make sure they're in agreement. But if there's a Fairfax connector stop and it's just a sign, it's pretty easy for us to change so that we can improve the pedestrian safety. And that's typically because we want to avoid a multiple lane threat where a bus is blocking the view of a pedestrian crossing the street. We put the crosswalks on the far side of the intersection to avoid that. And then depending on the VDOT funding, Chris mentioned that part of their program is that they go and improve the curb ramps at all locations along or at as many as they can along a repaving corridor. And so sometimes we can see that happen with improvements, and sometimes we can get new curb ramps in place, either at existing crosswalks or new crosswalks. So here's an example of last year. We had a location that we coordinated with, actually not just VDOT, but also Reston Association, because they own the land on the left side of this photo. This is on Lake Newport Road at North Point Drive. It's a new marked crosswalk. It's like the end of the pink trail comes out. And so VDOT actually built that ramp on the left side. And you can't see in this picture, but we did add signage here as well, and have a new striped crosswalk. And then there's two more examples of ones that happened last year. Lake Newport Road got improvements at Stewart, new curb ramps on the northwest corner, and upgraded crosswalks. And then West Docks had got a new crosswalk at Point Ryder with using existing curb ramps. And West Docks also got bike lanes, so the crosswalk was also saw improvements with the lane narrowing. And then this year, we're looking at 4 locations to add new crosswalks. Those are Beulah at Cinnamon Creek and at Abbotsford. At Abbotsford, we're leaving room with a painted median to potentially add a refuge in the future if we have funding for that. At Temporary Road and Old Reston Avenue, we were doing a bus stop relocation there for safety as well. And at Glade Drive and Breton Court, which also had a bus stop relocation too. So then going on to the pedestrian safety action plan. This was a 2018 study, and this study identified, they called priority corridors and crash clusters. So you can see all these little dots show the crash locations that happened with pedestrians, and I believe it's 2012 to 2016. And then the heat map shows where those are more centralized, and then they identified corridors. So the Parkway, South Lakes Drive was a corridor. And so you can see some of these corridors in your area that were identified through this plan. And then the funding for the pedestrian safety action plan grants targeted those locations that were either heat map or priority corridor. So these grants were, applications were open in summer of 2018. They had $8 million statewide, and we were granted $1 million based on our applications in Fairfax County. And there were quick delivery projects within right of way without utility work. So they had to be done by the June of 2020 and got notification in November of 2018. So in a year and a half, which is extremely quick for us. So we worked in partnership with VDOT to make that happen using their contracting mechanisms and their design team. And we constructed 14 projects in that time. And the scopes typically included rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We had 1 signalized crosswalk, refuge islands were common, curb ramps kind of associated with all these other improvements, and then signing and marking improvements as well. So the locations that we had in Hunter Mill, there were 5 locations, 2 on South Lakes Drive at Tanbark, which is at the entrance to South Lakes High School, the east leg of Tanbark. 1 was at Greenwatch Way and Castle Rock Square. Then 2 at Soapstone Drive, 1 on Ridge Heights Road, one at the 7-Eleven Reston Park Hindercare. It's 2300 Soapstone Drive, the address, that crosswalk there. And then the 1 at Bluemont Way and Discovery Drive. And all of these projects happen to have the same scope, which was that they all added pedestrian refuge islands and rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and most of them including curb ramp improvements to go along with that. So here's a couple of photos to show the outcome of those projects. This is the Bluemont Way and Discovery. So you can see these rapid flashing beacons are pedestrian. The pedestrian pushes the button and then the beacon starts to flash. It doesn't require a stop, but it does provide additional warning to the drivers and encourages yielding. They've seen up to 70% increases in yielding on driver behavior in studies across the country. And then this is the location at South Lakes and Tan Bark. And this one is sort of something we've been trying to do in a lot of locations across the county where roads were designed very similar to this. So they had 2 travel lanes of 12 feet wide in each direction and a turn lane that's 12 feet wide. And now we really can narrow to 11 feet wide, and that gives us an extra 3 feet. And so that 4 foot median can become a 6 foot refuge island. And that's what you're seeing here with the striping, and then the island is kind of wider at the nose. And the last grant opportunity I want to talk about is the Transportation Alternatives, or TA, set-aside grants, which now encompasses the Safe Routes to School grants. So they most recently accepted applications in summer of 2019. So we're actually still waiting to hear back on the awards for those applications because things have been delayed with the COVID situation, but hopefully we'll see that application renewed for 2021. And then they are enabled by the Federal Fixing American Surface Transportation Act, the FAST Act, and they're typically low to moderate cost projects. Like, we're not going to get multi-million-dollar projects from this grant opportunity, but our past projects have ranged from $200,000 to $1 million each. And they can be linear or crosswalk improvements. And in 2017, that cycle awarded the grant to Wolf Trap Elementary School. And just mentioned this one, that includes bulb outs or curb extensions, a pedestrian refuge island, and new curb ramp improvements to that crosswalk. And that is expected to be completed in summer 2023. That's all I have today. Are there any questions?
Excellent presentation, Lauren.
Thank you.
Are there?
Hi, Catherine. We have a couple hands.
Okay, thank you, Jose.
So the first one is Larry Butler, and you'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak.
All right, thank you, Jose. Yeah, Larry Butler, Association. I wanted to let everybody on this meeting know that recently the Reston Association Board approved the update of Reston on Foot and Bike, which was done by our Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee. Some of you probably involved with different iterations, started in the early 90s. We have a press release coming out this Friday, and it will be on our website. It's too large to email. It's about a 30-page document. But the important thing about it, particularly coming on the heels of Lauren's presentation, which was very informative, and thank you for that, is that it was ground truth by members of the committee. So there are recommendations in there for, rapid flashing beacons, crosswalks, and so forth. And, it's as current as it can be. Most of the groundwork that they did on, in the field happened last fall through this spring before craziness hit. So I encourage everybody to look at it. I think it's going to be a reference material for the mobility and pedestrian section of the comp plan task force. And so I want to make sure I get it in everybody's hands. Again, I can't email it, but I will try to send everybody a link to our website where you can find it, hopefully within a day or 2.
Well, that's exciting, seeing as I walked a quadrant of Reston back in the late 90s for the update that we did then. It's exciting to have another update out. So thanks for please pass our comments on to the committee in Reston for all their hard work, because I know it's a spectacular undertaking. Are there other questions?
Yes, I will be unmuting Allison. You'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak.
Hi, Lauren and Chris. This is Allison Grauman. I'm at Wolf Trap Elementary. Just first, thanks so much for this update. It was really informative and helpful. And Lauren, I'll just contact you by email just to ask a little bit about the plans for our project. Just sounds like they might be available to see, but this is really exciting. Thanks a lot. I'm done.
We just have one more hand, and that's Rick Hamilton. You'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak.
Thanks. Lauren, in Polo Fields, we have 2 through streets, Thunder Chase Drive and Colts Brook. both those streets have Reston Association trail crossings. There's no signage to indicate pedestrian crossing on Coltsbrook, and there are not crosswalks at either of those crossings. We submitted a request, and somebody came out and did a survey and said, nope, wasn't enough traffic, forget it. Well, needless to say, COVID has changed that, and lots of people are walking throughout the day. But more so, we have lots of playgrounds, fortunately, in polo fields, and there are constantly children crossing that street. Now, I don't know what the threshold that we failed to meet was, but we really need to have somebody take a look, and I can't remember if we passed that on to Shamali yet or not. We need signage on Coltsbrook saying there's a pedestrian crossing coming. We have a speed hump right near that crossing, but there's no signage saying there's a pedestrian crossing there. And then, as I say, there are no markings on either street for those Reston Association trail crossings.
So I can speak a little to that threshold. VDOT does have currently in their guidelines a minimum of 20 pedestrians crossing in any hour. So, if it's a farmer's market location, it can be on Saturday morning, but it has to be in any hour. We have to observe 20 pedestrians crossing or 10 vulnerable pedestrians, which is considered pedestrians under the age of 15, over the age of 65, and or disabled. And so we we go out as staff, or we employ volunteers to go out and do pedestrian counts so we can get these crosswalks added today. In the proposed, VDOT's updating this guidelines, and that's why I didn't really bring it up, because the proposed changes are hopefully that they will be removing that 20 pedestrian minimum, because we see this as a chicken or an egg problem. If people don't feel safe crossing in a certain location today, then they might not be there, but they could be there in the future if we improve the crosswalk and make the necessary changes. Sometimes it's helpful because sometimes we don't know where people are crossing, and we find out that there are more than 20 people per hour crossing, and it's something we may have know.
The only issue I have with the survey is that I don't know what time of day or day of the week they did it. If it's on the weekend, that's different from, a work day perhaps. Now, again, with COVID, we got people crossing those crosswalks all the time. But, if they take it at a time where you're not expecting to see any traffic and we get denied on that basis, that just doesn't sit well. Lauren, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, if you can send me more information about those exact locations, we can take a look at those. And if anyone has locations, we will take a look and go through the process as I explained, and hopefully in some future case we can get your crosswalks.
Okay, how can we get your email address?
Oh yes, it's my name, Lauren.Delmar with an E at the end at fairfaxcounty.gov.
Thank you very much.
All right, we only have one more hand, and it's Jim Moran. You'll hear 2 beeps, and then you should be able to speak. Can you hear us? You're unmuted, Jim.
Okay, I think, Jim, for some reason, we're not getting you, even though you're unmuted. So if you have, we need to go on with the agenda. And if Jim has a question later on, we'll take it at the end of the presentation. So the next, we wanted to talk about the pedestrian bridge over Wheelie.
Yes, this is Tom Bashadny. So we have some really good news here. We have entered the right-of-way phase of this project. We've gotten far enough in design to be able to move forward with the right-of-way. That started in this June, and we anticipate finishing that by the spring of next year, spring of 2021. At the same time, we will be beginning utility relocation. There are, I believe, 5 poles, transmission lines, overhead transmission lines that need to be relocated. And so Dominion will be starting on that as right-of-way is acquired, and they should finish that in spring of 2022. That will allow us to start construction in the summer of 2022 and finish the project in summer of 2023. So really good news. We did get approval from VDOT to enter right-of-way phase, and enter the right-of-way phase, and so that work is underway. So I'll be happy to take any questions now, or we can wait till the end, whatever you prefer.
Jose, are there any hands up? Did anyone have questions on the pedestrian bridge over Wheelie? If not, you can always ask at the end if we end the presentations before 10. Okay, Tom, you want to go on to the Fox Mill Pinecrest traffic light?
So Chris is going to handle that one initially.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait a minute, wait. Just before you go, Chris, when did you want to do the MWA? Tom, when did you want to do the MWA update, at the very end, or did you want to do it when Chris finishes?
I can do it whenever you want to. I do have to leave just before 10 to go to another meeting, though.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Chris, and then we'll do it.
Sure, real quick, and I saw one of the participants had a chat asking that we make sure we get to this. The Fox Mill Pinecrest traffic signal project is fully funded for design and partially funded for right-of-way. The county and VDOT work together to begin the design process for that. The project is not fully funded yet for construction, so we are working with VDOT to try and identify the funding for that. However, it's a multi-year project, so nothing is being delayed while we're working on that. The design is being done by VDOT's Location and Design Division. It's a fairly significant project. It's not just adding a traffic signal to the existing configuration. The road needs to be widened on the side street to have turn lanes. There's the crest of the hill on Fox Mill that needs to be taken care of so that it's a safer intersection, as well as all the associated utilities and drainage and everything that goes with such a project. So we don't have a schedule yet. However, as the design will inform us, as the design moves through, say, the next few months, the design will inform us about the order of magnitude for the costs so that we can tie down that final funding. And then likewise, that'll tie down the schedule. So unfortunately, typically a big project like that does take, a year or two to deliver, but it is a funded project at this point, and under design, just not fully funded.
And Chris, just to elaborate a little bit on that, the county did put $4 million on the project. So there is $4 million. We're waiting for the design to be completed to finalize how much additional funding is needed. But we have identified, as Chris mentioned, all the design money and the right-of-way money to allow the project to continue to move forward. And so VDOT and their consultant is working on the design right now.
Catherine, we have a couple hands, so I'm going to unmute Josh Anderson first. You'll hear 2 beeps and you should be able to speak.
Thank you for the detail. Yeah, just so I understand this fully. So we have funding for the design, and then is the 4 million separate? Is that just for construction, or is that also for the design part of the project?
That includes all phases of the project.
Okay, so that's money that's locked in.
Yes.
Great. And we don't have a timeline yet. Where is the funding coming from? The $4 million.
It's coming from Fairfax County Transportation Funds.
Okay. And is there any short-term plan to improve safety? There's many residents that are just concerned that while this, we understand at the time takes a while to get this done, that in the short term, it's maybe there are some smaller things we could do that could improve the safety while we wait.
This is Steve Walsh from VDOT. With respect to this intersection, I'll just add that, first of all, we have done various, the traffic engineering department has done various incremental safety improvements to address concerns of the years at this intersection. But we'll continue to look at that. But also adding on to Chris and Tom's discussion about the intersection, as far as the design goes, we've just recently made the decision that we are, although 95% or more of our design work is done utilizing consultants, we have a small in-house design team. And we've just made the decision that we're looking at using our in-house design team to accomplish the design so that we can help expedite the design process, as well as hopefully keep the cost down even further and work towards refining the estimate and schedule as we develop through that design phase.
Thank you, Steve. So what you're saying is 95% of the design is already done, and you're using internal resources to move along the last 5% and get us across the finish line?
No, what I'm saying is 95% of the time of our projects, we utilize design consultants to accomplish the design work. So
Gotcha.
only in this case, we have a very small team of in-house designers, and we have asked that team if they have the capacity to do the design on this specific project. So they will be working on that one.
And last question. I mean, you know, I'm with Fox Mill. I live in Fox Mill Estates, and this is a pretty important project for the community. Is there anything we can do? I mean, I just want to manage expectations. We've never gone through this before, so we don't know if 3 years or 4 years is a normal timeline for a project like this. So one, is this kind of a normal timeline for projects like this? And then two, is there anything that the residents of Fox Mill can do to help you guys move this along and, get this done in the most efficient way possible?
Well, first, to answer your question, the timeline does kind of vary depending upon, normally due to right-of-way acquisition and our dependency on the utility companies to relocate utilities. Remember, they're third parties. But we're very early in the process for getting started. So as we start to evolve and work our way through the design, we definitely plan to work with the community. So we'll have those opportunities and look forward to your input and participation at that time.
Yeah, all I would say is I think the community feels like you guys have done a good job over the last couple of years, reaching out for our input. We think you have it. I mean, if you go, there's a couple websites dedicated to this. There's been a group of 8 or so people that have been working this for 3 or 4 years. And so we're not so much worried about having input as far as aesthetics and that stuff. We're looking to help you guys. If there's anything we can do to either move things along, call utilities, anything that we can do that'll help make your job easier, we're interested in learning about that.
Well, I appreciate that feedback, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Okay, and then just the last thing, next steps as far as, so we're in the design phase. We've got $4 million locked in. What should be the next thing that happens, or what's the next thing we should anticipate happening to know that this is moving along at a healthy rate?
So we're internally with our design team, we are starting to put together a formal scoping document that outlines everything that needs to be done. The team is being put together. We will be coordinating with Fairfax County, some of that discussion as well. And then we'll start progressing with the design. There may be some supplemental survey that may be necessary, even though there was survey done originally with the preliminary concept designs that were prepared to look at alternatives. So there may be some supplemental survey that'll take place. Typically on projects like this, utilities are, particularly things like fiber optic and cable and other types like that, are constantly evolving. So we might have to go back and do a recheck on that. So in general, the early stages of preparing scoping, maybe some supplemental survey, and starting to look at what the overall design parameters need to be. So more to come.
All right, thank you for your time.
Sure.
Okay, at this time, Tom, could you do the update on the silver line for us so that we don't run out of time on your schedule?
Sure, be happy to do that. So at this point, the project is 98% complete. The stations themselves are largely complete. And the work that's going on right now is inside the stations, you know, certifying elevators and escalators, things like that, making sure that they're all operational and things like that. There are still some larger items that are being addressed. So there's been some discussion about the concrete panels, and Metro's Inspector General has been looking at those. They are expected to produce a report shortly on the concrete panels, and have some discussion about how to move forward with that. There have been some other issues in terms of the work that needs to be done in the yard that's out by Dulles Airport, and that work, there were some ballast issues. They're bringing in some new ballast to replace those, the existing ballast. There were some switch issues that have been addressed, and also they are completing the integration of the tie-in between phase 1 and phase 2 at Wheelie. The Silver Line shutdown has allowed that work to go forward. There will still need to be some weekend outages at Wheelie during the fall, potentially up to 3 weekends to finish the integration, but that largely has gone pretty well. So we're looking at substantial completion probably around the end of the year, and then it'll be turned over to Metro for their testing, and the Metro board will actually set the opening date. So sometime spring of 2021 in that general time frame, but ultimately the specific opening date would be set by the Metro board. So that's kind of a high level overview. Obviously MWA has a lot more details, but they're looking at trying to reach substantial completion by the end of the calendar year.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I believe we had another question that had to do with the Foxmill Pinecrest.
Yeah, I'll be unmuting Kimberly Cowell Myers. You'll hear 2 beeps and then you should be able to speak.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for taking my questions. And you know, we really appreciate your attention to this issue of the intersection of Foxmill and Pinecrest. As I'm sure you remember, 3 years ago, we brought over 550 signatures on a petition requesting action at that intersection. And the #1 concern that people raised in the survey they filled out when they signed the petition was safety at that intersection. This is a major issue, and in normal commuting times, it's an extremely dangerous intersection. We appreciate that it takes time to get, you know, the ball rolling and to get plans and designs and right of way and utilities, et cetera. But there's a real urgency here that we want to make sure is communicated and felt. We had a plan to have a community meeting at the intersection and have Supervisor Alcorn come and see it during rush hour, and that had to be canceled. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic quarantine period. We really, you know, we need you to understand how urgent this is. We're going to lose a life. We're going to have a very major accident at that intersection while we wait for long-term responses to be put in place. And so I really wanted to encourage you all to think in terms of short-term measures while we're waiting. And you know, you all are the traffic engineers. I'm sure you have better ideas than I do. But for example, in the slideshow I just previously, there were beacons around crosswalks. We've certainly seen other situations which horizontal delineators are put up. They're all over DC to mark out lanes. One of the major problems at that intersection, if you spend any time there, is that when people are traveling eastbound on Fox Mill and attempting to turn left onto Pinecrest, others found them on the right, and the people coming out of Pinecrest cannot see those cars because they're pulling around the cars that are in the line of sight. You put up some delineators there to mark out those lanes, and that would discourage, obviously not prevent, but probably discourage people using the lanes in that fashion. If you talk to the people who work at BB&T Bank on that corner, the guy who's the manager has a office with windows on two sides. He sits there and watches this all day. I mean, he's got all kinds of ideas. I mean, you all offered that, you know, you've done some temporary measures, which included like cutting back shrubbery, putting up that triangle at the corner with on the north side of Fox Mill by BB&T Bank. It's a triangular corner with a stop sign in it. And I wish you would go and lay eyes on that because it is a pile of rubble. It has been run over, knocked down. That stop sign has come down repeatedly. I mean, yes, it's an effort, but it's not a particularly effective one. And I don't think we should sort of hold it up as progress. It's not working, is the point. And those 550 signatures we produced on that petition were accumulated after these measures were put in place. In other words, these temporary measures have been put in place, but they're not resolving the community's concern about safety, right? And I really wish that, you know, we're not talking about convenience. It's not that we're worried about traffic backing up. We're worried about somebody being seriously injured at that intersection. And it's a real issue. You even get foot traffic there. Admittedly, we don't have a sidewalk yet. We've got bits and pieces of a sidewalk, but you have people on foot trying to cross that intersection, taking their lives into their hands. And I really wish we could get your attention focused as well. You very clever folks who are engineers could probably come up with some temporary measures while we wait for the long-term solution to be put in place. So thank you for your attention. It would be great if you could tell us when we could expect the design would at least be done, and that would mark some progress on the path that would at least reassure us that we're meeting some of our goals. I know a stop sign is kind of off the table, although, if you really wanted to keep people safe in the short term, we could do that for a few years while we waited for the longer term solution. I think we'd be willing to pay the price for that, the inconvenience of a stop sign in the short term. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments, Kimberly. Does Fairfax DOT want to handle that, or do you want, Stephen, do you have a comment?
I would say that we recognize the urgency, and that's why the county has put $4 million into this project to try and address the long-term needs. The temporary measures that have been put in place, it may not have been as effective as people would like them to be, but there are limited choices in terms of things that can be done. Steve may want to talk to that, but recognizing the 500 plus signatures and all that, that's why the $4 million was allocated to the project.
And I absolutely agree with Tom. That's the very reason why the project is moving forward. We're also trying to jump right onto the design phase. We will continue to look at how, if there are things during the design process that we could do earlier, we'll try to find a way to do that during the process. As far as your question about schedule, we don't have that information just yet. And that's just because I don't personally have it, but we're working on that, but we'll get more information as time goes on. And we'll reach out and have some sort of community update meeting at some point, working through Supervisor Alcorn's office.
Okay, thank you. I think at this time we're going to move on. Stephen, you can move on to your report, starting with the Hunter Mill Road one-lane bridge.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. So again, I'm Steve Welch. I'm the VDOT's Assistant Director for Transportation and Land Use to Fairfax County. Just want to give you I was asked to give you a brief overview of where we are in a couple projects and then address a larger issue that I'll talk about. So the 100 Mill Road Bridge project is one that we are continuing to move forward with. The design continues to progress. We were or are planning for potentially a mid-September virtual public hearing if we can get full approval on that. That has not quite yet been given the direction and guidance that we need from federal highways to allow virtual public hearings, but we are having some meetings this week, later this week, to discuss that further. But we are planning for a virtual public hearing in mid-September. Our goal then is to continue then addressing comments and finalizing the design throughout the winter in preparation for making the most of the construction season beginning early next year, 2021. So that's just a brief overview on where we are with the 100 Mill Road project. I was also asked to just update you briefly on Route 7 widening. As you know, that's a design build project, and design build by nature means that there is some design that continues to go on while right away and also construction is underway. And in that spirit, the design is largely complete. There are a couple of things that we are wrapping up. The bridge design over Difficult Run has now been completed and approved. The landscaping plan design is fully underway based on preliminary and previous plans that have been prepared and communicated. The noise wall analysis is finalized. There are 7.25 miles of sound walls that'll be constructed along both sides of Route 7. And the design of those now has to go through full design, meaning that we look at the geotechnical features of where the piles go in the ground and actually prepare the plans for the construction of those. Right away, I think we've mentioned in the past, there are 235 properties impacted on the project to some degree. So far, 102 of those parcels have been cleared. And given the size of the project of this nature, there are over 20 utility companies that we are working with and relocations that are underway also. So we're making good progress, and appreciate, and that's where we are with an update on that. So the next area that I was asked to present was a follow-up actually from this meeting 2 months ago, and that was more to speak to the VDOT's paving program. And there were some specific questions, and we do a presentation every spring or February timeframe about that. But I've modified that presentation slightly to also address some of the more specific questions that come up. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can do this correctly, so bear with me for one moment. Everybody hear me okay, first of all, I hope? Good. So can everybody see my screen okay? Should see the VDOT transportation logo at the start. All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so thank you for having me today to talk about this, and wanted to walk through what the agenda for this paving program discussion. So I'm going to briefly go over the planning and construction for paving projects, how our roads are selected for paving, talk about pavement condition, which is something that comes up a lot, briefly discuss the paving treatment types, our pavement dashboard, which is how we measure our progress and successes and where we need to continue to work on, a few facts and about our expenditures on the projects. And we did briefly touch on pavement marking and striping, but both Lauren And Chris and others spoke a lot about that earlier, so I'll touch on that. And at the end, I'll have some helpful information. So let's move forward with the planning and construction. So when it comes to paving projects, the planning for repaving in Northern Virginia and across the state is a year-long activity. Every spring and summer, we begin gathering our data and continue to collect that data for the next calendar year. During the summer and fall, while we also are continuing to collect and gather that data and sorting it out, we also start to prepare and coordinate for the upcoming season with our central office. And then in the winter, as winter happens, besides plowing snow, we're also closing out contracts from the previous year with our contractors who've finished all their work. And we're also beginning to prepare contracts for advertising of bids to the paving contractors for the upcoming year. We receive those bids and then we execute the contracts. And then our typical paving construction season, of course, is from March through October, with the weather being the best time for it. Occasionally we can get away with a little bit of work into November, but that is our typical construction season. So one of the questions that we get a lot are, how are roads selected for paving? And in particular, two areas are pavement condition and traffic volumes are used for that. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further, but also we talk about some of the decision making involves entire neighborhoods versus main streets, economies of scale, and also feedback from our maintenance crew. So let me jump into the pavement condition aspect of this. So how are pavement conditions rated? So our pavement conditions are rated based on a critical condition index, or called CCI, not to get too technical. The ratings are grouped into ranges or values, 5 ranges or values, basically running from excellent to very poor. As you can see, we do show a color coding there, and I'll explain why that is as we go through a little bit later. We also have a 6th category. It's called not rated, -1, and that's in case we've somehow overlooked one, then we ding ourselves, if you will, for missing one and making sure that we get it rated the next time around. So the next question we get is, how are roads selected for pavement and paving condition? Well, how is that done? How are pavement conditions determined? Well, we have contracts with companies that specialize in that work, and you can see the picture on the right. Hopefully everybody can see that clearly. These are highly equipped, very expensive vans that are filled with all kinds of technical equipment that provide us the information that we need. These vans have all kinds of equipment on it that are able to determine pavement stress, roughness, texture, rutting. It does do digital scanning. It does take digital measurements, and when I say measurements, both longitudinally and transversely or across the roadway, even thicknesses of some of the cracks and things that they find. It also has digital video and imagery, and of course GPS for tracking location. And all this is put into, as you can imagine, a very large database for our materials engineers and pavement engineers to work with. So the other question we get then is, well, how often are condition ratings conducted? How often do we go out and look at it? And the answer to that is, on interstate roadways, we do this annually. On primary roadways, we do this annually. So we do this every year. And on secondary roads, we do this 20% of the secondary roads, which are largely your neighborhood roads, if you will. So 20% per year. Over 5 years, we cover 100% of the secondary roads. But beginning next year, 2021, we will be doing rating the secondary roads on an annual basis the high volume secondary roads. So that's always another question that comes up. So with respect to that, on the pavement condition, we have online a interactive pavement condition map that is on our virginiaroads.org, and at the end of this I'll have more information on that site. But what this is right here is it's a screenshot of the pavement condition map, and in this particular view you can kind of see Reston's right in the center. If everyone can see that, Reston Town Center right there. Running north and south is Reston Parkway, which is green. And as I spoke to you earlier, things are color coded. So green means it's in good condition. And things that are in pink are poor and red very poor. So you can see running through in the area of Reston Town Center. This is New Dominion Drive, which was very poor. And then, of course, Town Center Parkway, also rated poor, and others. The other thing I wanted to point out about this interactive pavement condition map is you'll notice that I mentioned all roads are rated. And you'll see several roads on here that aren't rated. And the reason for that is we don't do the ratings on private roads. So it just so happens to be on this particular screenshot that there are a lot of townhome communities, condominium communities, commercial properties that are privately owned roadways that take care of and manage their own roads. So having said that, and speaking to how we view and do condition ratings on all the roads, next screenshot, I'm panning out a little bit farther to where you can kind of see the midsection of Fairfax County, with Reston being here up at the top. And you can see down the lower right corner the town of Vienna, how nothing is rated in that area because they take care of their roads. Upper left corner, Herndon, town of Herndon, they take care of theirs. But overwhelmingly, you can see that a large number of roads are coded green, blue, and yellow. But you can also see overwhelmingly, that is, that there are a lot of pink and red condition rated roads. And those are largely our secondary roads, neighborhood roads, if you will. So we know there's a problem, and I'm going to continue to speak to that here in a moment. So that kind of, in the question of how are roads selected for paving, that more or less addresses the paving condition. The other component, though, is that we utilize traffic volumes, and been asked before, how do you use traffic volumes for selecting paving, which roads get paved? So the way that we do that is for high volume traffic roadways, those that have an annual average daily traffic, or AADT, of greater than 3,500 vehicles per day on all of our interstate, primary, and secondary routes. We have a goal of 82% of the traffic or roadway network must have a CCI of 60 or greater. On the lower volume traffic roads, those that have AADTs of less than 3,500, which are primary and secondary routes, we have goals of 75 and 65% of those roads also must have a 60 CCI or greater. So that's how we use traffic volumes to make as part of our decision process in which roads get paved on an annual basis. So we've addressed paving condition and addressed traffic volumes. The other three I'm just going to speak to, and that is entire neighborhoods and main versus main streets. As you can understand, there are areas where we may have 2 or 3 neighborhoods that have poor, or should be very poor, ratings, and we may have contracts out for those 2 or 3 neighborhoods, but we also now at a point where in this particular season. We don't have enough money to do another entire neighborhood, but maybe there are a couple other neighborhoods that also are very poor or poorer. So we may take that fraction of money that's left over and then work on doing the main streets through those neighborhoods to at least get something done into the neighborhoods, and then come back in subsequent years to work on the remaining streets. That also speaks to mobilization costs and economies of scale. When we work with our contractors, the way that we set up our contracts, we know we have 2, 3, 4 neighborhoods that are poor or very poor. We ask contractors to bid on a package, if you will, of 2 or 3 or 4 neighborhoods that are grouped together. The reason is that that allows for a better cost, because one of the first things they do is go in and mill up the existing pavement, and then have to move the milling equipment over to the next neighborhood while they may begin paving the one they're in. And that helps with economies of scale on the bid prices and also the mobilization cost. And then the last point is that we get feedback from our maintenance crew throughout the year, and we keep track of that as well, as far as trying to identify which roads would be in the upcoming year's repaving program. So that kind of addresses those points about how are roads selected for paving. The next area I want to talk about briefly is just our types of pavement treatment. This is not with respect to potholes, that's a separate issue. But we have basically 4 levels. One we call preventive maintenance, and that's a slurry seal, where we go out and seal the roadway and do some latex on the crackings, and we do some chip seal, which is a type of almost, it's like a sand that gets put over top of to try to help extend the life of that pavement until we can, it can be scheduled for repaving. We also do patching and crack sealing as well as part of preventive maintenance. The next level up is corrective maintenance, is a plant mix where we mill and overlay up to about 2 inches on certain roadways. Kind of depends on how bad that pavement is. The next level up is on your upper right part of the screen is a restorative maintenance, and that one's a little more involved, where we mill 2 to 4 inches, and we then go back and overlay 2 inches of intermediate asphalt, and then up to 2 inches of surface asphalt. And then the worst case scenario is the full depth reclamation, where, as you can picture, we have to excavate the entire pavement, put back 6 to 8 inches of pavement stabilization and 2 to 4 inches of asphalt. And of course, those depths change a little bit depending upon which type of roadway we're talking about. So that's the types of pavement treatments that we do. So our pavement dashboard, this is our measurement of where we've been. Also speaks to a little bit to some of the problems that we've had in the past and what we're trying to work our way through. So back in the late 2000s, working into the early 2000s, our budgets were very tough. We had much lower budgets, and our maintenance program and our paving program, of course, took a hit, and we've been working our way out of that over time. Our interstates, as of the end of 2019 season, our primary roads are what we consider 87% sufficient based on the information I showed in the previous slide. And the interstates are at 82% sufficient. The 82% sufficient was the goal for our roadways with high volume traffic. But as you can clearly see, the secondary roadways, we've reached a point over the last 5 years, incrementally moving upward, where we're at 48% sufficient. And we're hoping this year to continue that same trend line and get our way up to somewhere in the 55 to 60% sufficiency based on the budget available and trying to attack the secondary roads, but also balancing that budget with maintaining the 82% sufficiency requirement on the primary and interstates. Moving on from that, I want to just briefly talk about some facts and figures over the paving program itself. So over the last 7 years, as you can see on the upper left corner, between 2013 and 20, on the interstate, primary, and secondary, in Northern Virginia, and first of all, Northern Virginia district, our district is comprised of not only Fairfax County, but Prince William County, Loudoun County, and Arlington, although Arlington takes care of most of its own roadways. We only do the interstates and some of the primaries in Arlington. But it is a 4-county district, so these are the lane miles. We have over 13,000 lane miles in Northern Virginia. And as you can see in the third column over, for lane miles in Northern Virginia district, we have over 11,000 miles of secondary or mostly neighborhood road lane miles. So to give you some idea, that would be the same as traveling to California and back 3 times over. Moving down the second row, in Fairfax alone, of Northern Virginia lane miles, with 70% of the interstates occur or are in Fairfax County. 53% of the primary roads are in Fairfax County. 50% of the secondary roads are in Fairfax County. So overall, approximately 52% of the lane miles are in Fairfax. The third line item down, what over the last 7 years, we've managed to repave approximately 47% of the interstate, 42% of the primary, and 59% of the secondaries. And lastly, on the last item, line item there, it kind of, it shows you the expenditures that have gone forward over the last 7 years from 2013 to 2020, how they've been distributed. So about 10% of it has gone towards interstates, roughly 16% towards primary, and 74% of our money's towards the secondary roads for a total of $903 million. Breaking that down just a little further, and I'll just quickly go over this one. You can see the expenditures by roadway type for each year from 2013 through 20. On the far right column, you can see back in 2013, we had 58 million, 2014, 83, and then you can follow through and see how those numbers have increased. And you'll also notice that in the last 2 fiscal year, 2019 and 2020, we're at roughly $105 million. So it has gone down a little bit, but we continue to put our effort towards maintaining that 82% sufficiency rating on the primary and interstate, while also a higher concentration, if you will, on continuing to improve our secondary roads. So similar to the way that I showed you a map earlier that shows the condition of all the public roads in Fairfax County, the map that you're looking at now is a screenshot of another online map. This is our 2020 statewide paving status map. And this one shows each year what roadways we're going to be repaving. And I don't know if you can see my arrow move around or not, but in the upper left corner, I spoke earlier about how in Reston, Town Center Parkway running north-south was rated very poor, and New Dominion also rated very poor. Those 2 roadways are currently being repaved and almost completed, if not completed as we speak. Maybe some final things that are going on there. The color coding, just jumping back a little bit, if they are red, that means they're scheduled to happen this year in this construction season. Those that are green means they are in progress, and those that are blue are already completed. But this interactive map, one thing that it does is And the screenshot here, you can see towards the center lower part, I have clicked on one of the blue roadways. This is a neighborhood road, and a palette pops up, and it gives you the name of the project manager in VDOT, in this case, Raymond Colick, his phone number, his VDOT email address, and the contractor that's working, or in this case, worked on that roadway. So if you ever have any question about a road in your area that you want specific information about, your best source would be to go onto the pavement status map. You can click on the road. You can then either call, probably suggest emailing the project manager directly to find out or ask questions about the upcoming pavement on that road. And like I did with the pavement condition map where I was zoomed in a little closer, I'm going to zoom out a little farther on the pavement status map. And again, this is the middle upper part of Fairfax County. And you can see we have projects going on all over the county, mostly a lot of secondary road projects, neighborhood road projects, but also some primary, also some parts of our interstate. So again, you can go onto that map and it has various filters, but the map does the entire state. So you have to zoom into the area that you're concerned about. So moving on from the paving program part of it, we talked earlier about pavement marking and striping that Lauren and Chris talked about. So when roads are repaved, obviously the pavement markings are disturbed, removed, if you will, during the milling operations. And our contracts are set up to be replaced in kind, but in a lot of cases, they do include some minor improvements that we work with our contractors up front to perhaps adjust slightly the location of the crosswalk to make it better aligned. Perhaps we add some edge lines going around a turn, what have you. The next bullet point is that we occasionally also we make pavement marking changes that will help in areas that we've identified roadway network and safety operational needs where we may lengthen a left turn lane where we have that opportunity and the pavement is there to allow us to do that, or perhaps even to create a turn lane in an area where there currently isn't one, but perhaps there's some pavement there to allow us to do so. And then lastly, that we work every year coordinating with Fairfax County DOT to look for opportunities where pavement markings during this pavement repaving projects can be changed to enhance on-road bike networks, whether it's a shared lane, a standard bike lane, or a buffered bike lane. In some cases, to coordinate pedestrian improvements such as crosswalks, like Lauren talked about earlier, and Chris as well. So generally, that's just an overview of the how we coordinate all year long, how we also do look at that coordination does involve also looking at pavement marking and striping, looking forward. So, so if you do have any questions or inquiries, have a problem with an area or have a maintenance request, you can call the 1-800-4ROAD number, which is a 24-hour customer service center. We also have My VDOT online, which is a panel that pops up and you can fill in some standard questions and opportunity to write in questions. I suggest using that. That's one way that really documents it. And then the two maps that I showed you earlier, both the pavement condition map, which is an online interactive map, and the 2020 paving map, which I just showed you, can both be found on virginiaroads.org. And once you get onto that location, you just look at the tag where it says web maps, and you can go through and find those two maps as well as many other resources, if you will. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity and stay safe.
Wow, that was a comprehensive overview, Stephen. Thank you so much for that information.
Certainly.
Jose, do we have any, we are past 10 o'clock. Are there any specific questions specific to the paving program?
We have 3 hands. I'm gonna unmute Adam Rubenstein first. You'll hear 2 beeps, then you should be able to speak.
This isn't related to paving, but I did have a question for Mr. Welsh, if I may, about a road I live on. I live in a new community, about a year old, and the road, Michael Faraday Drive, south of Sunset Hills, apparently is privately owned. Is there a process if you want to try to get VDOT to take over the road?
On privately owned roads, those are taken care of by the HOA. Community together is in charge of maintaining those roads for both snow plowing, paving, striping, drainage, what have you, on all the private roads.
The road I'm referring to, though, it leads to Nova Community College, some office buildings, and my community. So I'm just curious why it's privately owned. It's not just for my community, it's for all those other entities that I mentioned as well.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics as to why it's privately owned. I mean, you may be able to talk to, if there's a formal HOA. We do find there are cases where there's not actually an HOA, but there may be 15 homes, and the citizens within that community just share information and work together to solve the problems. But typically, there's a HOA community. So,
I mean, is there a procedure I can go through to try to get the road taken over by VDOT? Is what I'm aware of.
It's very difficult, but it can be done, but it has to be it's a process that has to go through the community itself actually agreeing to take on all of the maintenance of the roads. It then has to go through the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for approval to be accepted into the state system, and a few other processes. So it's a lengthy process, and there are several that on occasion that question is asked, and that's how it's done.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I stop sharing screen or not here.
All right, we have another hand. Mark Malcolm, you'll hear 2 beeps and you should be able to speak.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. The issue that comes in my mind, I'm from Polo Fields on the west side of Fairfax County Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the streets in that particular neighborhood are between 25 for the newest streets and 35 years old. Almost all streets, including a third of Thunder Chase, which on the condition map showed green, have never been paved since they were built. There have been some requests on different streets, but not a concerted effort. How does a neighborhood increase priority when all streets have cracking through the center, cracking about every 10 feet? It's beyond where preventive maintenance will work, as has been done on Colts Brook. It's really into the next level of maintenance that is required for these roads. Recognize limited resources, but what is the best way to go about it of increasing or seeking to increase the prioritization toward their repaving?
Well, I would ask that if you would to, certainly go on to the My VDOT website that I talked about, and where you can put in an inquiry, and that inquiry will get sent to our paving team for consideration along with all the others. So, I can't speak specifically to those roads, obviously, right now, but we'll certainly have them take a look at it.
Understood. It's been a hodgepodge of inquiries going in over a period of years regarding the neighborhood, where it should be handled as a neighborhood on being fixed. It hadn't up to this point. Thank you.
No, understand.
All right, we have one. Oh, I think the hand went down. I think that was it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen, for your presentation, and thank you to the members of the community. We thought we were going to have a short meeting today. So thank you to everybody that participated. The presentations were terrific. The community involvement was inspiring. But I do need to pay attention. I usually do around the room now, but I think everybody that has come has participated, and I'm going to recommend that. I beg your pardon?
I think we do have one more hand. It's Jim Moran. I think we were going to circle back with him at the end, and I saw the hand just right now.
Okay. Yeah, Jim, could you?
Can you hear me this time? Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Can I just have, I've got about 12 questions, and I know we don't have time for that, but you told me to wait. These questions have been mounting. Can we go back to Steve Welch's presentation to the page where he shows the map of New Dominion?
Yeah, give me one moment to try to.
And while you're getting that up, I have a couple comments and suggestions. One is, the lady talked elegantly about, her long-going concerns. So did the last gentleman. And somebody mentioned, well, let's talk about it at a public hearing. I suggest that in addition to public hearings, you need to have on-site meetings where if there are enough people interested in coming to her street and you coming to my street, you need to perhaps talk about maybe adding a department or personnel assigned to go out and meet with communities or neighborhoods or concerned people. I would like to have FC and VDOT come out to Purple Sage. But if you look at the map that Steve Welch just pulled up, this has been done. You said the project is pretty much completed. I believe it actually is completed. And if you look to the west, that's Walnut Branch, I believe, off of New Dominion. I'm not good at maps, but there's nothing done. They stopped the work. Am I looking at the wrong map here? Reston Hospital. No, that is, I'm sorry, that you're on, I mean.
That's not quite the right area.
Perhaps it's farther north where we follow New Dominion up to where it meets Walnut Branch. Well, what is the street over there? No. Is there a Walnut Branch on this map?
I'm not familiar with where Walnut Branch is, but it'd be better.
Go back down to lower on the map and you'll see nothing, even there, nothing's going on the left-hand side. I don't know if that's Herndon, but where we are, we're on the west side, there's nothing being done, even up to Route 7. There's something going on here. But
let me explain a little bit further. I'm going now to the pavement condition map, and I think I might have the answer to that. So this is the live map you're seeing, where earlier you saw that I had the screenshot, so bear with me. So now I'm closing in on Reston. Okay, so Reston's right here, and I mentioned New Dominion. There's my arrow moving around the screen.
Steve, I see Walnut Branch is red. It's just north of Barron Cameron there on the west side of the parkway, the red.
Right up here?
That's east. That should be east side. Oh, there it is. I see it right there.
On the west side.
Yeah, there is the west side. So what does red mean?
So red means it's very poor.
And go look it up. Why is that blue a little? I mean, where was the paving just done on the east side of Walnut Branch, on the east side of Fairfax County Parkway? That should be blue. Is that farther up?
So
this is the road that goes to.
This is the pavement condition map. I will go back to the pavement.
I want to know the road that goes to North Point. Lake Newpoint's another one that was done. Lake Newport Road. Lake Newport has been redone and you just did the west side of that.
So if you said just did, so let me clarify, do you mean,
Or the cross,
do you mean this season?
what do you mean season?
Yes, they mean the
Last
season.
year.
Yeah, this
They,
Yeah,
they,
last
they
season.
mean, it
Okay.
was just recently done.
So the condition map that you're looking at here reflects the condition through 2019 season. So until we're done with this construction season, which runs from spring through the end of this fall, this particular pavement condition map will not be updated. So if, for example, some of these roads, well, I'll use Town Center Parkway and New Dominion as an example. This map on the condition map, these will not show as being blue until next season because this is the condition map through the end of last year.
Okay.
So it's an active map. So obviously we'll update that over this coming winter, this condition map based on what we completed this construction season.
Well, can I make another point? If you take New Dominion down to where the new Reston station is being Sunset Hills. If first off, I don't know if this is appropriate for this this meeting, but the walkway, the access when people get off of that, when it opens and people get off of the metro stop, it leads them up to Reston Parkway. It leads them up to Microsoft and Oracle. What about the people that want to go to Target and to the YMCA and that shopping center there with Chipotle's? We got to get off where our feet are tired. We got to trudge 2 blocks in the wrong direction, go down to the ground and walk over to Target or to the YMCA or to the shops there to eat dinner or something. Why didn't that go towards the shopping center? And then I have a question about tunnels. All of these places where people, you know, at the new wheelie station, there are no tunnels. And I use that station. I've been using that station for 35. I mean, since I've been going downtown via the 505. But you know, I use the Silver Line, or used to before I got retired. There you have to, if you park by the going back to the wheelie parking wheelie, you park it, say, at the power lines across the street, and you either have to run across the street, take your life in your hands, and just because you go to the intersection there and you push the button and you use you do it legitimately, you got people turning right on red, and you're more likely to get hit using the traffic light. Where are overpasses and tunnels? We've got tunnels all along Reston Parkway that were put in 50 years ago. And there's some at South Lakes that go under. We don't even know they're there, but the people that live there, it joins communities, or that keeps them joined, because when a road goes through and it's widened, the people on this side of the railroad tracks don't go to the other side. So tunnels, they can't be that expensive, and they're much safer and more convenient. Why don't we put some tunnels through? Why didn't we put some tunnels at the Wheelie metro station? And why aren't we putting them at the Reston station?
So I'm going to defer to Chris, if you don't mind, Chris, about the connectivity with sidewalks and pedestrian connectivity, since that's away from the paving presentation that we're here.
Sure. Well, tunnels are actually somewhat unique to Reston. I mean, we are doing those as part of the I-66 trail project. We do realize that separate grade connections are safer. But they, for instance, the bridge for Wheelie, the bridge for the W&D over Wheelie Avenue is $13 million. So tunnels are not that expensive, as that example, but they do need to be built as part. Typically, they're built as part of the roads themselves. So I know that Supervisor Alcorn has a group looking at the Wheelie Avenue corridor, studying what options are for better crossings. I'm also aware that Comstock or whoever's consolidated the southwest corner of Wheelie and Sunset is interested in building their own bridge across Sunset to our new bridge at the WO&D. So there are possibilities in the future, but it is not something that is typically easily done or cheaply done.
Well, again, I agree with what you say. If it's done prior to the building and proffers, why weren't they required to put tunnels in all along there? Because you don't want to go 3 miles to a tunnel, go under the tunnel and walk 3 miles back. You need tunnels every few feet. So if you look under Reston Parkway, there are tunnels a couple blocks apart. So why aren't we requiring these people, these moguls, these big builders to come into our communities and make profit off of us, and tell us how to live?
Okay, I'm gonna intercede here. It's Catherine interceding. I understand philosophically what you're discussing, Jim, and I appreciate your participation and your interest in this. But I will say I've been doing this as a citizen on these committees for over 25 years, and grade separated intersections, which is what you're talking about, going over or going under, they have been discussed as we have grown as a community in the Reston area. So since our meeting has already gone 40 minutes beyond its scheduled time, I would like to ask you to, you said you had 12 items, to write your items up and let's put them on. Let's see which of them we can handle in advance of the next meeting, outside of the meeting, or which we can make an agenda item for on our October 28th meeting. So can you,
Catherine?
Yeah, so Jim, can you put those together and send them to me with a copy to Shamali? And then we will talk to the different staff members about putting this on the agenda. So that being said, Chris, did you want to add anything else to it? Because I was going to go into the, we normally do around the room, but we've had a lot of participation during the meeting. I want to thank everybody involved in today's meeting. The next meeting is October 28th, which is a Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Usually we're pretty good about the stop time, but we've had wonderful presentations today and great interest from the community. So I think it was a really good meeting. If anyone wants to add anything to the agenda, they should do that through the, if you go into the, well, the agenda has the contact information for the Hunter Mill Board of Supervisors to add anything to the agenda. And is there anything that any of the presenters would like to say that needs to be said between now and October 28th? Has to do with, are there any public hearings we should be looking for? Are there any meetings that you did allude to some of them in the presentations? Is there anything that we need to know? Chris? Tom? Stephen? You may have already lost Tom. All right. Well, thanks.
This is Shamli. This is Shamli, and I just wanted to say that there are some upcoming Fairfax County and Franconia Springfield Parkway alternatives analysis and long-term planning study meetings. There's virtual community meetings coming up. There's actually one today from 11:45 to 1:15, and then there's one on Thursday, July 30th from 7 to 9 p.m. and Tuesday, August 4th, 7 to 9 p.m. We have links in our Hunter Mill District newsletter. If anyone is interested in those, you can email me directly if you can't find the link, and I'm happy to get that information to you.
Plus, I think that the Fairfax Alerts has a transportation component. I know I got an alert yesterday about the Springfield virtual meeting. People can sign up for Fairfax Alerts for that particular, it doesn't have to be for the whole county. It can be limited just to a particular part of the county. So those of you that would like to watch that sort of thing, especially in our virtual age now. Yeah. Are we to assume that this is going to be a virtual meeting on October 28th? Or we don't know yet?
At the moment, it's going to be virtual. If things change and we're able to meet in person, then we will definitely do that.
Okay. Okay, terrific. Well, thank you everybody for your time, and I hope everybody stays safe between now and the next meeting. And thanks again.
Thank you
Thank you, everyone.
to everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jose.
Bye.